Welcome back to Yerushalayim. We're here for the 9th of Av video for United Synagogue TV. My name is Tzvi Sperber from JRoots. You know, when we stand up here now, we're standing in the exact place that most of the Jewish people, when they wanted to come to mourn for Yerushalayim, would come to. Even for 500 years after the temple was destroyed, Jews were not allowed up onto Temple Mount, the platform that we see behind us. Jews had to come up here to the Mount of Olives to view what was taking place, to have a look at the destruction. Now, of course, the view of Yerushalayim has totally changed. And the view of Temple Mount that we see over here, too, has completely changed. We have over here today the Golden Dome, the area of where the supposed building of the Beit HaMikdash once stood, in that area. And then we have the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is standing on this side, the place where they pray at today, the Muslims. In our time, it would have been a portico, an area where lots of activity took place. Remember, the Jews would come up to the temple in all its glory on the days when the temple itself was in the beauty of understanding that it was the place of Makom, the place where heaven met earth. They'd come up onto the temple from the southern side, which you could see the walls over here, coming through this area onto the platform towards the area of where the Beit HaMikdash, the Kodesh HaKadoshim, stood. And that eternal flame, if you want, that smoke that went up to heaven, of where the Mizbeach was, the altar. Everything came to a crashing end in 70 CE. And from that time onwards, the Jewish people have not been able to once again relive that glory. When I stand here on the Mount of Olives, you're reminded of a section of Bava Batra. And in Bava Batra, in the Masechah and the Talmud, it speaks about this idea. It says, when the temple was destroyed for the second time, large members of Israel, they basically held back from doing many things. They didn't eat meat, they didn't drink wine. The Gemara says as follows, Rabbi Yeshua spoke to them and said, my sons, why do you not eat meat or drink wine? And they replied, how can we? Shall we eat flesh now? Shall we eat meat, which we used to bring as an offering on the altar behind us? Shall we drink wine that we had, of course, the famous ceremony on Sukkot of pouring of the wine and the water? How can we drink wine? So he said to them, Rabbi Yeshua, if that is so, then you shouldn't be eating bread. Because remember, inside the temple, there was the bread that was built, that was made there for the meal offerings. And how can you eat fruit, he said to them? Because of the bikurim, the new offerings that you brought there throughout the chagim, throughout the different festivals. So we're not going to eat fruit, we're not going to eat bread, we're not going to eat meat. He said, but then you can't even drink water because of what we just mentioned that took place on Sukkot. Chag HaMayim, the festival of water. To this, they could find no answer. And then Rabbi Yeshua turned to them, he said this, my sons, come and listen to me. Not to mourn for the fact that we don't have the temple is impossible. We don't have the glory of what the temple once stood for. That's impossible not to mourn. But he said, the disaster has occurred. And therefore to mourn too much would be overbearing. It would also be impossible. Therefore came the Chachamim. And they said, we need to be reminded of the building of the Beit HaMikdash and of the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash in every time that we have any type of happiness and chagim throughout the year. He said, even when you build a house, make sure that you build the house, but leave a part to remind us of the Beit HaMikdash. Leave a part bare. A man may prepare a full banquet for the wedding, but he maybe should leave out an item or two. A woman can put on all her ornaments, all her jewelry, but maybe she should leave off one or two pieces as well. Because it says, Im eshkachech Yerushalayim, if I forget you, O Jerusalem, let my right hand wither, let my tongue stick to the top of my mouth. I should not forget Yerushalayim, even at my happiest hour. And of course, that's why we know that at Chatan, at his wedding, puts ash even on his head for some minhagim, some customs. But others, of course, the breaking of the glass, which connects us to that idea too, of Churban Beit HaMikdash, of the destruction of Jerusalem. We're at that time, which is just after Chatzot, that time after half day, that time when we make a change, we get up, we can sit on chairs, we can learn some Torah, we can do different things now, connecting us to looking towards the future. But we can't forget what's behind us on Har HaZeitim, what once stood here. The glory of Yerushalayim, the glory at that time of the Jewish people too. When I stand here on Har HaZeitim, you need to remember other things that took place here as well. It's an incredible thing to think that today the view that we have of Yerushalayim is a very different view of what we had over 50 years ago. Because remember, where we are now too, Mota Gur sat on Har HaZeitim, on the Mount of Olives. And he directed his paratroopers into Yerushalayim. But all the time they remembered that concept of the fact of what is missing. Like Ben Gurion had mentioned earlier on, Yerushalayim is like the heart of the body. We can survive without the limb, but we cannot survive without the heart. And even though that heart is beating, maybe there's still a few beats that are missing each time. Because we don't have the complete understanding of what Yerushalayim could be, if only. I want to take us to the final part of our day in Yerushalayim, to another mountain. So follow me this way, please. Me'al Pisgat Ha'atzofim, standing on the view of Mount Scopus. And it's Sofel Yerushalayim, looking towards Yerushalayim. We remember the famous song that Yoram Gaon made famous as well. Yerushalayim, Yerushalayim. Jerusalem, the beauty of Yerushalayim, the spiritual side of Yerushalayim, the physical side of Yerushalayim, all meeting from this place over here, Mount Scopus. And why? Because when we go back in our times, Har Tzofim also appears throughout our history. Probably one of the most famous times that it comes up is in the Talmud in Makot, where we have the story, of course, of Rabbi Akiva, who is up here with his Talmidim, standing up on top of the mountain where we are right now. He looks to Yerushalayim. They are all weeping because they see the Churban, they see the destruction of Yerushalayim. And Rabbi Akiva stands up here and he's laughing. And they say to him, Rabbi Akiva, how is it possible that you're standing here and you're smiling and you're laughing? Because he looks at the view like we look behind us. And he sees, yes, the destruction of Jerusalem. He sees the terrible tragedy that has taken place. But at the same time, he sees Shualim Halchuva. Foxes are weaving their way throughout the destruction of Jerusalem, throughout the stones of Yerushalayim. And he remembers the famous prophecy. Number one, that nobody will be able to go towards Yerushalayim and everybody will be die there. Anyone that comes onto that mountain. But at the same time, he remembers the other prophecy. The idea of the fact that there will be a time where Yeladim v'Yeladot, children will be playing in the streets of Jerusalem. There will be a time, Od Yeshvu Zkeinim Zkeinot, the old people, you and me, will be sitting in Yerushalayim. And Yerushalayim, from here, what he sees, will be rebuilt. Akiva nechamtani. Rabbi Akiva, you have comforted us. It's so hard for us to sit here and to look at the view over Yerushalayim. But as we said before, once we come over that idea of half day on Tisha B'Av, we move towards a different feeling, a different emotion about Yerushalayim, a different emotion throughout the day. And even though we remember the destruction, and even though we carry on with the customs of Tisha B'Av until the next day, the 10th of Av, because the temple continued to burn, we ourselves can look towards the future. But for us today, in 2021, how do we do that? How do we stand here and mourn Yerushalayim when we look towards such a beautiful city? A city that's got 3 religions in it, a city where people are non-stop building, a city of beauty. And really, we ask the question, Uvenei Yerushalayim HaKodesh, that Jerusalem should be rebuilt? Is it not rebuilt? How hard is it for us to connect ourselves to that idea? So it's very hard. It's not a simple task for us to connect ourselves to the words of Lamentations of Eicha that we read last night. Because we need to make sure that that doesn't stay as history. Remember, the Jewish people don't live that way. They live with memory, not history. They live with memory. But still, look at the beauty. What am I lacking? To be a Jew is to remember things throughout the whole year. To be a Jew is to have Pesach to remind ourselves of the Exodus. To be a Jew is to have Sukkot to remind ourselves of the booths of those flimsy houses that we built in the Midbar. To be a Jew is to celebrate Purim, to remind ourselves of what took place in Persia. To be a Jew is to remind ourselves of Hanukkah and the festival that deals with the Maccabees. And at the same time, to be a Jew is to remind ourselves of the glory of what Yerushalayim can be. We have to look towards the end of Eicha maybe for that answer of what the day is all about too. Because the concept of the destruction of Jerusalem is not physical only. That is one part of the story. When you look behind and you see a view today as opposed to a view that you would have had 2,000 years ago. Remember what it says. Whoever had not seen the beautiful building of Herod had never seen a beautiful building in their life. And that means that the Beit HaMikdash was unbelievably glorious. An incredible building. But there's something else here. The last words of Eicha we repeat. All of us as we're sitting there on the floor reading the book of Lamentations, and it comes up again and again in our kinot, in the prayers that we say over Tisha B'Av. Hashivenu Hashem Eilecha v'nashuva chadesh yameinu kekedem. God, please return to your people. How long will we have to continue with this idea? How long will we have to suffer? And that is down to us. Remember what it speaks about. Shuva elai va'ashuva aleichem. You return to me, I'll meet you in the middle. I'll find a place to meet you. Tisha B'Av is not just about physical, it's about the working on ourselves as people, the spiritual side and human side of what it means to be a good person in this world. To be a Jew in this world. What are we meant to do? The functions of who we're meant to be. But we never lose hope or despair that the time has come and we've finished and we're never going to get back the beauty of what once was. I stood in Auschwitz one time guiding a group. And it was towards sunset. And they put the lights on. Right there in front of the crematoria. I'm standing there in Birkenau overlooking crematoria number 2. As I stood there, our shadows appeared in the crematoria, in the changing room of the crematoria. That idea that there's no difference between us and those people, unfortunately, that died in the Shoah. It just happens to be that we were here and they were there. We're the same people. Our shadows were there. And it was a frightening moment to see the shadow of yourself inside the area of the changing rooms before heading into your death in the gas chambers. But then the most incredible thing happened to me. As I stood there, running through the ruins of crematoria number 2, Shualim halchu vo. The foxes ran through the crematoria and out the other side. And I was transported to the place that I'm standing at now, where Rabbi Akiva stood. And I said, Akiva nichamtani. Rabbi Akiva, you have comforted us. That even on the day of today, such a solemn day, such a tough day for the Jewish people to go through, 3 weeks of mourning that the Jewish people have led themselves. There's no other people like us from that perspective. No one else sits there and mourns for 3 weeks over an idea. But we ourselves will go far and beyond that, because that's what Yerushalayim means to us. But at the same time, we never close the door. And we say, Rabbi Akiva, just like you stood here on Mount Scopus and you comforted the Jewish people then, every day that goes past, we remember what you said. And we remember the hope and the desire that we will be able to overturn everything that went wrong. And we will be able to make right all of the things and the wrongdoings that took place. And we will be able to fulfill the prophecy of Hashivenu Hashem Elecha v'Nashuva. I hope today has been a meaningful day for each and every one of us. It should be a meaningful day that we should remember what took place. Our memory should always be focused on that idea. But at the same time, our dreams, our hopes, our aspirations should be alive and beating within each and every one of us. We'll be able to rise to the challenge that we've been given in this generation. A generation that does not merit to see the rebuilding of Jerusalem. It's as if that generation was part of the destruction. But think about what it could be for that generation that can be part of the rebuilding of the Jewish people and of Jerusalem. Think about what that means to be part of that generation. That's what we can rise to. That's what we can get to. If I forget you, O Jerusalem, always has to stay on our heart. But at the same time, we have to be part of that concept of we can rebuild Yerushalayim. Thank you for joining us.